Did you know used coffee grounds can reduce deforestation because they contain many of the same properties as palm oil? Welcome to Sustainability Matters Today, where you'll learn about the fantastic work people and organizations are doing right now to heal our planet through environmentally friendly products and methodologies. My name is Daniel Hartz, and I speak with amazing champions of sustainability who prove a clean and beautiful future on Earth is possible because green practices oftentimes make financial sense. I aim to uncover the important role money plays in people's decisions to adopt and commit to environmentally friendly practices in order to create a chain reaction of positive change. In each episode, you'll also learn practical steps you can take every day to live a more eco-friendly lifestyle. Let's jump in. In this episode of the Sustainability Matters Today podcast, I interview Fergus Moore, co-founder of Revive Eco and champion of diverting coffee grounds from landfill. Revive Eco collects and recycles used coffee grounds to produce a range of eco-friendly products. Recently, they were chosen as a Solve MIT Global Finalist for their proposal of converting coffee grounds into high-value natural oils. For their innovation, Revive Eco received the LiveWIRE Smarter Future Award in 2016, a Green Champion Award from the Glasgow Business Awards in 2017, a grant from Zero Waste Scotland Circular Economy Investment Fund in 2018, and recently they were semi-finalists in the Chivas Venture Final in 2019, for which they received $20,000 in prize money. Please subscribe to the Sustainability Matters Today podcast to learn about other champions of sustainability like Fergus. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm here with Fergus Moore, co-founder of Revive Eco. Thanks for joining me, Fergus. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Daniel.
So you're working on some really exciting things with Revive Eco. And before we jump into it, I'd love to start with your background. How did you get started in sustainability?
Well, first of all, thank you for thinking what we're doing is exciting.
Yeah.
But in terms of how we got into sustainability, for me, growing up, and certainly as I was kind of coming up to starting my university career, shall we say, I was always interested in having an impact beyond myself. I didn't necessarily know that was going to be going down the sustainability line, but I certainly knew that I wanted to do something that would allow me to have as broad an impact as I possibly could. Hence why I studied business at the University of Strathclyde. I felt that entrepreneurship, being able to start my own company, that was a kind of at least a step in the right direction for having as broad an impact as I possibly could. For me, sustainability, when it came to actually moving into that space, for me, it just makes common sense. It's both sort of necessary from the current climate sort of that we're in at the moment, both in terms of climate change, political climate, everything. I think that a focus on sustainability is definitely necessary, but also from a kind of a natural world point of view. I always had an interest in the natural world growing up,
right?
And waste isn't natural. Human beings are the only thing on the planet that creates waste. Everything else, if a plant dies, it falls to the ground, it decomposes, and it becomes plant food, or it becomes fertilizer for the next plant or for animals or whatever it might be. There is no waste in nature. And I think because of that interest in the natural world growing up, and also that kind of drive to be to create impact, I think those two things kind of, I guess, came together, and it just made sense for me to start focusing on sustainability and, I guess, sustainable entrepreneurship.
That's a really cool story. I think there is no waste. That's why nature is so perfect, because everything has a purpose, even if the purpose is to no longer exist. But in that process, by no longer existing, it feeds the next life. So with that in mind, I mean, how did you start Revive Eco? Where did that come from?
So with Revive, I mean, it's quite a long and laborious story now, but I'll skip to the highlights, I guess. As I said, I was studying business at the University of Strathclyde. Me and my co-founder Scott were both there. And we were both working in hospitality at the time, just part-time jobs. I was working in a cafe. Scott was working in a big sort of event campus place in Glasgow. We were faced day to day with the amount of food waste that was being left at the end of every single day. This was something I think that, got to us, certainly, because we were on the front line, if you will, seeing, literally putting that stuff in the bin, seeing and knowing that no value is being created from something that realistically still had value. So we started to play with different ideas of how we could create value from food waste. Food waste itself is quite a difficult thing to work with, general food waste, because it's, day to day, a food waste bin is going to have completely different things in it, just depending on what people are leaving behind every day.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to focus in on more niche food waste streams, and the one that we focused on was coffee waste. That was simply because I worked in a cafe, Scott worked day to day serving coffees. It was just a thing we knew, nothing really more than that.
Right.
But we quickly realised that coffee grounds had so much more value than was currently being garnered from it. People were coming into the coffee shops, sometimes asking for wee bags of coffee grounds to take home, to put in their gardens, to add to their compost heap. So I guess we already knew that there was value there, but it's only been, through this process, through this kind of development of Revive, that we've realised that doesn't even come close to the amount of value being left behind. I think we might have actually spoken about it the last time we spoke, that actually creating a coffee from coffee is probably the lowest value thing you can do with coffee. The oils and everything held within coffee has so much more value,
right,
than simply, a hot cup of Joe to keep you going in the morning.
Yeah.
So we set up the company the week that we graduated, and that's us been working on it now for 3 years. And we're now at the point that we've raised investment and we've got money there to develop this as an actual business idea, rather than just simply a kind of a concept, which it was up until maybe about 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah, super exciting. I mean, that must feel really good that it's being validated and, you're seeing the work over the last few years actually building momentum and moving forward.
Yeah, totally. I think it's kind of, for us, it feels like it's been a real long time in the process, but I guess at the same time, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we need to understand that this is going to take a long time. We are creating something new, something that's never been done before. So there's a lot of potholes. There's a lot of things that even people with years of experience have never come up against, because, as I said, we're creating something completely new.
Totally. And, going back to the genesis of how this all began, you mentioned that food waste was really the biggest kind of factor in getting you excited and interested in sustainability and really in starting Revive Eco. And I think food waste is a really important topic. I think it's starting to come more and more into the mainstream, just because we're seeing some pretty shocking numbers of anywhere between a quarter to a third of all food being wasted, which is insane to think about, considering that we hear also about millions of people that are hungry, not just in third world countries, but even in first world countries. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in terms of what problems are associated with food waste.
Yeah, totally. I think when it comes to food waste, I see the problem as kind of twofold. The first one is, as you said, the kind of juxtaposition of the amount of perfectly edible food going to waste, while I think it's around about 13% of the planet is currently undernourished. The kind of unfairness, maybe, of that is just mind blowing. Not to mention that obviously the tonnages that we actually see going to, whether it's landfill or anaerobic digestion or whatever, is terrifying. When you consider how much of it is actually perfectly edible, and on the other side of that is that scale and where is it going. AD, compost, these are a good start, but when we are seeing the amount of value in just coffee waste, I can only imagine the amount of value that could be created from other waste streams, whether it be other sort of large niche streams like whiskey waste or brewery waste or anything like that. There must be huge values just ironically going to waste. And on top of that, there's then, when things are going to ending up in landfill, there's the emissions, there's everything else related to it. I think that people maybe look at food waste going to landfill as, well, if you throw food waste out, in your compost or whatever, it breaks down and so it can't be that bad. But actually, it ending up in landfill is a million times worse. It creates far more emissions, creates methane, which is far more damaging. And simply put, it is an issue. It's a global issue that we need a solution to. It's not kind of one that it would be nice because we could create a bit of economic value from it. It is a problem that requires a solution, and it requires it as quickly as possible.
Totally. And so how does Revive Eco provide that solution? I mean, how do you prevent and reduce food waste?
So for us, unfortunately, with coffee grounds, that waste, the grounds are an inevitable part of making a coffee. When you actually make a coffee, it's about 1% of the coffee grounds, or coffee beans, that is used to create that coffee. So that other 99% residual material will always go to waste, unfortunately. So what we are doing is taking that out of, I guess, the waste system, and our goal is to maximise the value being created from that. These used coffee grounds, around about 60% of your standard cafe's waste will actually be coffee grounds. So it is for the coffee industry a substantial percentage of their overall waste. So being able to take that out not only provides them with actually a cost saving, but it also means that they're sending less food waste to whether it be AD or landfill. Hopefully not, but at the same time it still does, because coffee grounds aren't actually, at the moment in Scotland, aren't looked upon as food waste. So they actually can still go in your general waste, or basically whatever bin they like, to completely legally, which to us blows our mind. But that's the way it is, I suppose. I think that's hopefully going to be changing.
Yeah, that seems pretty crazy that coffee grounds, which are, I mean, I guess they're technically edible. We certainly drink it. You filter water through it. I don't see. That's very strange that Scotland doesn't see it as food waste.
Yeah, I think if they go in food waste bins, they're not. They are allowed to be put in food waste bins, but they're not legally regarded as food waste.
Oh, I see.
So it's kind of, they're in a bit of a funny middle position at the moment where they can kind of go wherever, which is no use to anyone.
Yeah, so not only is Revive Eco, preventing and reducing food waste by taking the coffee grounds from cafes once they're done with them, but you're also solving mass deforestation of tropical forests in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, because they're making way for palm oil plantations. So that's an issue you're tackling as well. And just to provide some context why forests are being cleared, or could you please provide a bit of background on what exactly is palm oil?
So palm oil, it's a vegetable oil that has a sort of wide range of uses in lots of different industries. Once you actually start looking into palm oil, it's incredible the number of products that it's in, whether it's from a sort of small percentage right up to sort of larger percentage in things like margarines and things like this. So it's in things like cosmetics, the food and drinks industry, household products, pharmaceuticals, pretty much anything, to be honest. It's one of the sort of most widely used vegetable oils globally. And as you said, that sort of the growth that is seen over the past 20 or so years, these countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, they just simply could not keep up with the growth of this commodity product, just because it was the sort of the drive for palm oil in products from the West was just so monumental that the only way they could keep up was, as you said, through mass deforestation of their tropical rainforests, which, not only is that just the destruction of natural lands with the kind of, I'm sure people will have seen the the adverts over Christmas from Iceland for destroying the habitats of orangutans and other sort of animals that live in these areas. But there's also the emissions impact of this. These tropical rainforests hold unbelievable amounts of carbon emissions within them. They are basically, they are the lungs of the planet, and they have been sucking in, for want of a better phrase, these carbon emissions for thousands of years. And by chopping them down, we are just then releasing every last ounce of it back out into the atmosphere. A couple of years ago, it's dropped down slightly now, but it's still not great. But a couple of years ago, deforestation in these areas actually accounted for 10% of the world's carbon emissions for a year, which, considering how many cars I see on the motorway driving past this building right now, is absolutely insane to think of. And unfortunately, palm oil is still growing, and these rainforests continue to be chopped down to make way for new palm oil plantations.
Yeah, as I was doing some research on palm oil, I read multiple times that basically 50% of products in a supermarket have palm oil or some sort of palm derivative in them. Yeah, it's just, there's so many predictions on how much it's going to be growing. It's like growing 7% year on year. There's just some really big growth in a very short period of time. And so that's actually where Revive Eco comes in, because you're looking to replace palm oil with the oil that's inside the coffee grounds that you were mentioning earlier. You're currently working with a world-renowned research institute on that, trying to find the best way to extract it. Can you give some more background on what exactly you're researching and looking for?
Yes, so I guess we did some research with the University of Strathclyde here in Glasgow, looking at what was held within coffee grounds. Obviously, we knew that there was coffee
Right.
held within coffee grounds, but what else was there in there? And was there anything else with value? And from that small piece of research, we found that yes, there was. There's lots of different sort of acids and fatty acids held within coffee grounds that have a wide range of uses in different industries as well. The most exciting part for us is that they actually contain all the same components as palm oil. So the four key things held within palm oil are palmitic acid, linoleic, oleic, and stearic acid. And all four of those are in a high percentage within coffee grounds. So the next step for us was to then look into how we could, I guess, get access to these oils. How could we extract them in the most cost-effective and energy-efficient manner possible? We started speaking with, I guess, any engineering company that would listen to us, and we were basically met with stony faces and basically a no from everybody. It wouldn't be possible. It would be too expensive. It certainly wouldn't be energy efficient, or kind of it wouldn't be possible to do it in any kind of sustainable way. We'd have to be using kind of nasty chemicals and solvents and things like that. So serendipitously, the University of Strathclyde was actually doing some work with as you said, a world-renowned research institute, and they introduced us to them. Just basically, they knew that we were looking at chemical processing, and this institute was working on chemical processing at that point for a completely different product, but still, they still had expertise there. Had a conversation with them, and I think that they were probably the first people that we spoke to that actually got it. They got what we were trying to do. It wasn't two wee lads just want to build a wee machine that could get some
Right.
oils. It was, we had a global vision. We wanted to make the entire coffee industry more sustainable. And I think they bought into that vision, that mission, that kind of sustainable mindset. So straight away, sort of bonded over that, shall we say, and started to look into whether or not there was any way that we could do this, as I said, in a energy and cost-effective manner. So that's now what we're sort of about 6 months into a 12-month project with them now. We are developing a whole new technology that is currently not used anywhere else, that allows us to extract these oils without using any solvents, and is extremely energy efficient. It actually basically only uses heat and water, and allows us to pull all these oils out to be used in, as I said, all these different industries. Yeah, so as I said, we're about 6 months through that. We're hoping to have a demonstration unit up and running in probably September, October time here in Glasgow.
Super cool.
And at that point, I think that we're really excited. Obviously, we're really excited about that. But that'll be the first time that we're not just saying we are going to do this. It will be the first time that it's real, not only for us, but also real for our potential customers, for potential investors, for everyone. It's kind of, no, this isn't just a pipe dream. We are doing this, and this is a game changer for the coffee industry.
Oh, that's so exciting, and you're so close now, just around the corner.
Yeah, it's kind of equally exciting and terrifying.
Yeah, I bet.
To be at the point of, as Scott and I aren't engineers, we've got limited sort of technical, scientific knowledge. So to now be so heavily engrossed in an entirely scientific and engineering business, is it is scary. It's not no point sort of beating around the bush with that. But I guess we don't need to have an engineering degree to understand the way people work together, to understand the way sort of to create solutions for problems. The research institute they have the engineering knowledge, the university has the scientific knowledge. All our partners kind of help us with that. But yeah, as you said, very, very exciting time for us.
Yeah. So how closely does the oil that you're extracting from the coffee grounds resemble palm oil?
So like I said, it's got all the same components. To say that it is a straight replacement probably wouldn't be accurate. It's the components within palm oil that we can replace. So palm oil itself, so the kind of crude palm oil, actually doesn't have a massive value. It's a commodity. It sells it, almost similar to oil does by the barrel, and it's not got a huge value. It's the components within that hold the value for, cosmetics products and things like this. And these big companies, let's just use cosmetics. These big cosmetics companies are shipping in crude palm oil from Indonesia and Malaysia to then go through more processing to strip out these individual components before they are then mixed in with their formulations to create their products. We are basically allowing them to skip all of those steps and just provide them with the individual ingredients within palm oil. So those stearic, linoleic, palmitic, oleic acids, and a range of other ones that are held within coffee as well. Meaning that not only are they not needing to, or not only are they losing a step in their supply chain that they don't need to deal with anymore, but they're also removing all the logistics around that. That's an ingredient getting shipped from the other side of the world that's then going to another plant to be stripped down to their components, to then be shipped to them, to then be shipped to their customers. We're kind of providing them with a more locally sourced and sustainable alternative to these products.
Oh man, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
One question I'm always interested in is, why would a company want to use your coffee ground oils instead of just the industry standard? But the answer is really obvious, because there's a lot more work involved with industry standard palm oil, because they have to get all of the little parts out of it that they need. You're doing all of that for them, and you're just saying, well, you need stearic acid, here it is, it's made from coffee, but that doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of things involved with it, especially if it's going to things like cosmetics or food and drinks products, because obviously that's human consumption or being used on human skin. So we need to make sure that the kind of traceability elements of it are all tied up and things like that. So maybe saying, we extract it and then we send it to them is maybe making it sound a little more simplistic than we would love it to be that simple. But on the I guess from a high level, yes, we're removing that We're removing the need for them to be dealing with multiple partners, the need to have these huge logistics costs and emissions from these logistics on their books. We're giving them the kind of green credentials of using ingredients created from sustainable sources, not to mention allowing them to have the stamp of we don't use palm oil, which at the moment has massive value to these to companies. The public is massively turning against palm oil, as I'm sure you'll have seen in the news and lots of places, which I think sorry to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think that there's an element of maybe education that needs to be had around palm oil. I think people think that palm oil itself is damaging, as in by consuming palm oil, we are doing damage to ourselves, or palm oil is just inherently bad for the environment. That's not the case. There is sustainable sources of palm oil. Palm oil is still the highest yield vegetable oil on the market. It's more than double the next down, which I think is coconut. In terms of yield, it's 5 times more than soy, which is widely used in other things. So it is the cheapest, most widely available vegetable oil out there. And it's, yield-wise, it's the best one for us to use. So that's maybe something that the public maybe doesn't understand. And it's something we've faced a little bit when we were saying that we were wanting to replace palm oil. It's kind of like, oh, well, palm oil actually is the best. It has the best yield. There's no way that you can sort of impact such a huge economy using a waste material. And we do understand that. But even if we could only reduce 1% of the amount of palm oil being created, 2%, that is a monumental amount of deforestation being avoided. It's a monumental amount of logistics costs being reduced, or logistics and the kind of carbon emissions surrounding that. Not to mention that it's huge savings for all these companies that are currently using palm oil, and value created for them as well, because people are turning against palm oil.
Yeah, no, very interesting. I think you're absolutely right. There's when something gets vilified, it's very easy to start confusing where exactly the problem lies.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I was actually very surprised to know that palm oil itself is quite a healthy oil. And the reason why one of the reasons why it's so popular is just because it, like you said, it's the highest yielding. So in fact, it's one of the least wasteful types of oil. It requires the least amount of space to grow in order to get, a gallon of oil.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that it grows in very tropical places, and other things grow in tropical places like forests. So the only way to actually scale or to get enough oil at the scale that the world is currently looking for, it requires basically just removing all the forests.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a really big issue. And that's why it's so exciting, I think, that you're able to, remove a lot of the kind of logistical challenges associated with palm oil for the companies that need it, because then there's this relatively strong incentive. I would imagine a financial incentive is, I think, one of the best incentives for companies to make a change and to look into new alternatives and find other ways. I'm curious to know, I mean, you mentioned, speaking of yield, how close, if you can say, how close is your yield to palm oil? I mean, do you require tons of used coffee grounds to get a small amount of oil, or are you actually able to produce it at a rate that's scalable and makes sense?
I mean, so in terms of the amount of oil held within coffee grounds, it actually is at a pretty similar rate to palm. It's round about, so I think palm is round about 20%, maybe 22%.
Oh, wow.
We are sitting maybe between 18 and 20.
Wow.
So it is a high percentage. That's not to say necessarily that we will get that yield from our technology. So that's how much is there in total. What we are trying to do at the moment is maximize the amount that we can actually extract using this technology, because we know that getting 50% of that will be easy, but then getting 75% of that will be 100 times more harder. Getting 90% of that will be 1,000 times more hard.
Yeah.
So, actually getting closer and closer to that level will be basically there will come a point where it just will not be financially sort of sustainable to be trying to extract these coffee to this the oils at this yield. We are hopeful of getting round about somewhere between 15 and 20, and we feel like from the lab tests that we've been doing that is doable. And as you said, the kind of there is tons of coffee out there. So in terms of scale, even if it was half the amount of oil as palm, there is enough coffee grounds out there for us to still create a massive amount of these oils. But yeah, as I said, it's trying to maximize this technology to make sure that we're getting the very most out of them.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting. I mean, you mentioned that you're not using any kind of nasty chemicals or anything. It's just heat and water. So even that part of it is also great, because you're not relying on anything that can be really harmful to the environment further downstream, or the pollution side of it is significantly negated as well. So once you're done processing the grounds for oil, you're still actually left with quite a valuable product. So once the processing is done, what's the next step?
So yeah, we're still left with a really sort of carbon-rich residual material. To give you a bit of context, the original idea of what we were going to be doing with Revive was collecting coffee grounds, simply drying them, and then adding a few bits and pieces to it to create a kind of natural soil conditioner or a natural fertilizer type product. So that was the original plan. We found that the coffee grounds, however, were very acidic, so they could only really be used on certain plants, and they could only be used at a sort of quite a low volume, or else it would just overpower the plants. So I guess as a lucky break, that put us back to the drawing board to look at other ways to create value from it, and that's what led to the oils and everything, and the rest is history. But luckily for us, when we extract all these oils from the coffee grounds, a lot of them, as I said, are fatty acids, so they reduce the acidity of the coffee grounds right down, so they actually make them a far better soil conditioner or fertilizer product. They have far wider uses on different plants, and they're still very carbon rich. So the kind of two main outlets that we're going to be looking at, the first one, as I said, is this biofertilizer product. In the future, we're also hoping to then pelletize the residual material to create a kind of biomass pellet product. The plan for this is basically to then actually burn those to power the process itself, which would mean that it was basically self-sufficient. We would be completely off the grid.
Cool.
And it would run from its own waste stream. That's something we're still very early stage with that. We're still kind of trying to develop that with our research partners. But that's a real kind of exciting prospect for us to be able to have a completely closed loop system where literally every last ounce of this material is getting used to create the maximum amount of value.
Super cool. I mean, that ties back in exactly with where you started about, sustainability makes common sense, and in the natural world, there is no waste. It's so cool to see that you're actually working towards having a business that runs that way. Very cool.
Yeah, I think for us, it's quite an interesting place for us to be in now that we're kind of looking at the circular economy and sustainable business, that when we've been developing the business model, if we come to a point that it is right, so the coffee grounds come into the factory, they come in plastic bags, the coffee grounds go into the machine. Right now we've got a load of plastic bags. What is there that we can do with that? I think that most companies would go, okay, the plastic bags, well, they'll go in plastic recycling, they'll get sent away. Again, don't know what it would be, but there is potentially a way that we could make value from those plastic bags. There is value there. We could break them down and use them in something that we've not even thought of yet. I think that allows us to just continuously innovate rather than looking at it as like, okay, well, there's a waste stream from here, so we better call a waste management company. It's okay, we've got a waste stream that's either going to be a cost to us or it's a potential revenue stream for us. And the fact that companies over the past 50 years have looked at, because it is only over the past 50 years. Before that, companies would not look at, they would be looking at, right, we don't want to chuck that out. How can we do something with it? Over the past 50 years, with this new kind of take, make, dispose model that we're living in, they just look at it and go, oh, somebody will take it away for us. How much is it? Who cares? We'll pay for it. Common sense dictates that you're losing money.
Yeah.
Like, it just blows my mind. Even if we could get rid of it at cost, like create something that allows us to get rid of it at completely cost neutral, we're still making a saving on a potential cost. It's mind blowing to us, and people to look at us as if we're kind of like, oh, these guys are, really, reinventing the wheel here. When, not to pat myself on the back too much, but to us, it just, why would we ever not take advantage of a potential revenue stream? I just can't get my head around it, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What you're saying is identical to, in a previous episode, I interviewed a regenerative farmer whose name is Gabe Brown. He's based in North Dakota. And one of Gabe Brown's biggest things, he's a very profitable farmer, which is very unique, especially in the US. He always says a big part of profitability as a farmer is to use the waste from one enterprise to fuel the profit of another. That's exactly what you're saying. I mean, if coffee grounds come in plastic bags, how can you take that plastic bag waste and turn it into, I mean, best case scenario, you can turn it into the profitability for another enterprise. Just like, and you're doing it as well with, with your idea for the biomass pellets that you're going to burn to fuel the machine that makes more oil. And so it's just this perfectly kind of circular economy, I guess, is the best way to call it. And so, speaking of which, you wrote a LinkedIn post about the circular economy because, I mean, as you're saying it, Revive Eco is really becoming a part of it and embracing it. I guess just for context, and we've kind of been talking about it, is there sort of a clean, easy definition for people who may not be familiar with the term circular economy? What is it exactly?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's something that the circular economy as a whole needs to work on, as a clean definition. For context, the typical model that our economy now sits in is a kind of take, make, dispose model. So, a company chops down trees, creates a product from wood, sells it, somebody uses it for a wee bit, then chucks it, and it goes to landfill. That's the kind of, I guess, the baseline economic model that we've been working with for the last while. And clearly, that is not sustainable. There are a finite amount of resources, natural resources out there, and we're doing our very best to work through every last ounce of them. So we need to slow down. We need to start looking at ways of reusing, sort of regenerating these natural raw materials. So the circular economy sort of looks at it from a completely different point of view of understanding that raw materials will probably be necessary in certain industries and certain places, but it's looking at trying to keep that to the bare minimum. If there is a way to create those products using recycled materials, is there a way to prolong the life of that product so that it's not just used for 6 months and then chucked out? So there's 6 kind of key things that they look at. So it's looking at shifting towards renewable energy and materials. So from a design point of view, looking at ways that we can design out waste. There's looking at, so it's called loop, so it's keeping components in a kind of closed loop. So that would be kind of where we would fall in. We kind of look at ourselves as closing the loop on coffee shop waste. So, the coffee waste is created, and rather than us just taking it to landfill, we kind of allow it to continue around and create products that maybe go back into the food and drinks industry, so kind of prolonging that life. There's kind of, different business models like leasing and sort of exchanging. So rather than just getting rid of something, could somebody else still garner value from it? Once you've used your clothes for a certain amount of time, you might not think they're nice or cool anymore, but somebody else might. So it's all these sort of things. It's prolonging the life of products and minimizing the amount of raw materials that need to be used in the economy as a whole. Which I've basically just proven that there is no kind of easy way to describe what the circular economy is. I'm sure there's smarter people out there that are trying to work on one, but it's a bit conceptual, I'd say, still at the moment, which I think is an issue because it needs a tagline. It needs a sort of, somebody needs, from a branding perspective, needs to look at it and give it a snappy line, because there's still an educational piece that's required there. I think that because people don't quite understand it, they're looking at it as just a new buzzword for hippie, tree huggery type folks, which is in no way what it is. It is a completely new way of looking at the economy rather than just a CSR push, which I think maybe the public, right through to sort of investment and policymakers, maybe don't quite fully understand yet.
Yeah, a lot of these things, especially in their kind of infancy, I think people quickly assign them to the tree huggers and the hippies. But as you're demonstrating, there's a lot of financial sense behind it.
Exactly, yeah.
It makes much more business sense for you to just use your finished coffee grounds and create electricity from that than it is to buy electricity from the grid or from a provider. It's just common financial logical sense.
Totally.
And I think you're right. Once we're able to find some sort of snappy title to it, it hopefully should kind of take off a bit more.
So just to kind of add to that, we find it really interesting that the circular economy is starting to become more part of everyday of the economy, or people are talking about it more, and people are talking about it as this. As I just did, talking about it as this new concept, this new way of looking at doing business. When realistically, if we look at our grandparents or our grandparents' grandparents, the idea of wearing a shirt for 6 months and then the new summer collection comes out, so you chuck that shirt away, just didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Fashion is a real culprit for it. But with everything, having a mobile phone for a year and then chucking it out to buy the exact same mobile phone, but it's now got a new camera on it, it just would not have happened 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago. People recycled. They didn't look at it as recycling. They looked at it as just, well, there's a hole in my shirt, so I need a shirt, so I'll sew it up. It's just interesting how we shifted so far away from that kind of like, we can just chuck out anything. We've got so much. We have so many new products. We've got so many things to choose from, and now we're kind of coming back full circle, ironically, to the point that we're kind of looking at it as like, oh no, it does make much more sense for us to not just chuck something out straight away. If you're wanting to chuck out a phone after a year, well, there's places that you can take it so that someone else that can't afford the brand new phone can have it, or that the pieces of gold and iron and everything that's held within it can be taken out and used for other products, which I just find it kind of ironic that it is looked at as a new concept when it was the common sense of 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, these kind of older logical concepts are coming back as though they're the newest hot thing, and there's like probably business blog posts talking about innovative new ways that you can reuse old things, whereas like you said 50 years ago, that was probably just everyone did it, and if you didn't do it, then that's not very logical of you, and why would you?
Absolutely. Like my granddad worked in a shirt factory in Ireland, making shirts for Marks and Spencers, and I think he would be laughing his head off at me talking about this newfangled way of doing business, because I cannot imagine that factory had an ounce of waste that wasn't absolutely necessary. Yeah, so it's just funny how quickly we shifted away from it and how quickly we're now shifting back to it, because people just seem to be really switching on to it, thanks to things like the David Attenborough effect and things like this. It's amazing how much impact the visual element of it can be. Just seeing actually for themselves, it's not just scientists saying, "Oh, we need to start recycling plastic." It is actually having a tangible effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, shifting gears back to the coffee grounds, what was really interesting about Revive Eco is it's kind of a dual marketplace in the sense that you're creating a product and then selling that from the used coffee grounds, but your business relies on other companies providing you with their used coffee grounds, and that's what you're using to create your products. Can you tell me a bit about the collection process and how that whole process works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the process itself works is we work with a resource management company here in Glasgow. They do the coffee grounds collections on our behalf. So up until now, we've actually been quite lucky in that we've not done any outbound marketing to get any sort of cafes or restaurants on board to provide us with their coffee grounds. It's all been people, I guess, hearing about us and then getting in touch with us. But the basic way that it has worked up until now is cafe gets in touch with us. We sign them up they basically send them out a quick kind of form just to get some details and sort of a general idea of how much coffee waste they go through in a weekly basis. We then work out a collection system. So up until now, it has been pretty bespoke for each individual client. We're hoping to get that more automated moving forward, but that's for a future conversation.
All right.
But depending on how much coffee grounds they go through in a week, we'll then decide on how many bins we'll send out to them, how many collections per week they'll do or we'll do. Most of them it is just one bin, one collection a week. But then, so with some of the bigger clients, for example, like the Scottish Events Campus here in Glasgow, which is a big kind of event venue, they have far more regular pickups because they have thousands of people coming through their venue every single day. So they produce a whole lot more coffee grounds. We provide them with the bins free of charge. There is a charge for the collections, which the vast majority of people that get in touch with us are happy to pay. Some of them, I think, are looking for something for free, but unfortunately, just with working with a resource management company, it's not something that we could provide for free. They have costs that we need to cover.
Right.
The reason most of them are happy to pay it is we are removing waste from one of their bins. So the vast majority of them see a reduction in their waste costs in general. So when we charge for our collections, they actually still end up making a saving. That's certainly the case for the bigger places. The smaller places, it's more they're kind of breaking even, but they get to sort of brag about the fact that they're being more sustainable and kind of get those green credentials. We then provide each of our clients with monthly impact reports, which they all really find useful. It allows them to shout about what they're doing. It allows them to tell their customers how much waste they're diverting from landfill, the kind of carbon emission impact of that. Which, as I said, for the smaller places, that's just nice for them as a wee bit of maybe a post in their social media.
Right.
But for the bigger places like Scottish Events Campus, the University of Edinburgh, that these impact reports can have a real sort of tangible effect on their annual reports, their sustainability policies and things like this. So they've really taken to those impact reports and are sort of, I guess, just love the fact that we're offering that to them. So I guess each client has their own kind of drive behind why they would work with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. That's a double win, at least for the bigger ones. They get cost reduction for waste removal, and they also get the the win for the sustainability part, which is really nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I mean, isn't it more work for them or for the people working there to sort out the used coffee waste from everything else and being mindful of that?
Yeah, that's something actually we've it's a question we've been asked a lot, but it's never been an issue in terms of with the customers we work with. That's never been an issue. The reason Scott and I we didn't think it was going to be an issue even when people were bringing it up. We worked in cafes, we worked on the shop floor, we knew how it works out there in the front, and see it. As long as there is a bin close by, you're told this is where plastic goes, this is where this goes, and you know that it's the rules.
Yeah.
So we weren't really that worried about that. There's also the fact that the vast majority of cafes already segregate their coffee grounds at source. Most places will have a kind of knockout drawer or a knockout bin or something that after they make a coffee, they basically just take the coffee puck and knock it out into. So they're already being separated.
Right.
All we're asking is that rather than then pouring that drawer into your food waste bin, you pour it into a coffee waste bin. And we've had no issues with that at all. We've had a tiny amount of contamination in the bins over the past sort of year, 18 months. But I mean, it's been, it's never been anything more than maybe like a tissue or like a filter paper from a like filter coffee,
Right.
tea bags, like it's tiny wee bits and pieces like that. But they're once in a blue moon, so we've been quite lucky with that.
Yeah, for people who aren't familiar with the coffee industry or exactly what the day-to-day is like, it sounds like a lot more work, but the way you described it, doesn't seem like there's really any behavior changes at all.
No.
It's just you're dumping out all of the coffee grounds, which are already segregated, sounds like most of the time, into the bin next to the one you normally dump stuff into.
Exactly, yeah.
Pretty straightforward. That's good. The easier it is, then the less, first of all, the less mistakes there are, but then the more motivated companies will be to take it on.
Totally. And that's something we wanted to work on, was to make sure that there was that kind of ease of shift between, what they were previously doing to this, even though, as you said, it is a relatively easy shift. But, when you're working with people that are maybe only working part-time or that, that are just there to earn a bit of beer money, they're not really going to care, or maybe not going to listen as much as they should. So we work quite hard to kind of make up a wee, just a one-page outline sort of explaining why it is that separating the coffee grounds actually does, it's more than just simply this is the new regulations around where things go into different bins. It is, by doing this, you are creating, value. You're reducing carbon emissions. You're helping reduce the amount of palm oil. Yeah. You're helping this, that, and the next thing. So I think it brings it home as more of it's maybe getting a bit too big for ourselves, but almost a duty, rather than just simply that's the rules.
You're getting buy-in from everyone, not just the top people, but also everyone feels like they're helping out and contributing. I'd love to know, what does the ultimate dream for Revive Eco look like? I mean, so, put another way, what does a perfectly quote unquote sustainable world look like to you?
Oh, that's a big question. To go back to the circular economy, that to me is the only way that the economy moving, or a society moving forward, can be sustainable, and it needs to be taken in to everything. It can't just be, businesses trying to do a bit of a corporate social responsibility move, whilst, behind the scenes they're still, desecrating forests or rainforests in other parts of the country. It has to be across the board. It has to be every business. It has to be every society. It has to be every home as well. I think that society is certainly in Western society, we have that. It's the public themselves, as much as it is business, that is not, I guess, doing ourselves many favours in the way that we sort of are so quick to dispose of things. And there's so many things that can be done to make a home more sustainable. And I think it has to just be across the board. And then the final piece of that has to be policy makers as well. It has to be government. I think all three working together, business, the public as at large, and the government, all need to kind of work together. And it's not just focusing on. It's not the government having sustainable goals because we think it's what the public want, and it's not the public. Oh, okay, I'll chuck this in the recycling because I guess that's what you have to do. It's an understanding across the board that if we don't do these things, there isn't going to be a society, there isn't going to be an economy, there isn't going to be a government, there isn't going to be anything in the future. It pains me that people still don't seem to understand just how close to, not to sound too kind of over the top, but just how close we are to a cataclysmic disaster in terms of our current climate, and climate in terms of actual the world climate, but also sort of, I guess, political and societal climate as well.
Yeah.
It terrifies me that people are still cynical of whether there is climate change, let alone the people that understand and know that there is climate change and yet still do nothing about it. Not everybody has to go out and start a company looking at creating a more sustainable way of living or a new sustainable, circular economy business model or whatever. But just take a minute and look at your own home. Take a minute and look at your own sort of life and see if there's parts that you could be more sustainable, because there 100% will be. And that's kind of, I know for a fact that there's huge elements of my life that aren't sustainable that I need to work on. And unfortunately, that is the case across the board. And it's just something that needs to happen. It's not a kind of, you said it was a kind of a dream, I guess. Unfortunately, it can't be a dream anymore. It has to be it's a necessity that we need to start looking at these things.
I think it's very true. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's urgent, and we need to do it right now. And it's pretty. I find it also pretty shocking and surprising that we're still having the conversation of whether or not it's something that we even need to worry about, if it's even valid, these concerns. As there's a lot of internet memes going around about this stuff that I see, it's not one person doing a million things perfectly. It's a million people doing a couple of things imperfectly. That helps a lot. As we start to wrap up here in the last minute or so, do you have any books or resources you can recommend for people who are interested in the type of work you're doing or in circular economy?
Yeah, a couple of things. In terms of the circular economy, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation online, just their website is absolutely fantastic. It has a huge amount of resources in terms of the circular economy, both in terms of what it is. They probably have a pretty good definition there. News within the circular economy, what's going on within it. So that's a fantastic resource. Probably my favorite book in terms of business and sustainability would probably be a book by Yvonne Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. It's called Let My People Go Surfing.
Ah, cool.
It's an absolutely fantastic read in terms of the history of Patagonia and its founder Yvonne, but also looking at how he built a company culture with values and kind of a real drive for environmental sustainability at its very core. So it's a really interesting book. Patagonia are a really interesting company as well in terms of the work they do. They give 1% of their turnover or their revenue every year to environmental causes. I think it's now they've given over 100 million. I may be making that up. And the last book I'm actually reading at the moment, which is it's interesting. It's called Doing the Right Thing, A Value-Based Economy. It's by a guy, Arjo, I think it's Arjo Clammer, his name is. And that's, again, a really interesting read. I'm only maybe about halfway through it, but it's really interesting. It kind of looks at, the difference between looking at a business just as an entity and as something that has values. It kind of compares it to a house in comparison to a home. A house is a business. It just is a thing that provides walls and a roof or whatever. But a home is something that has, a history. It has stories. It has different, all the elements that make a house a home is something that you need to maybe look at within your business as well and within the economy.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for both of those, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is a good one. Absolutely. Thanks for that. And where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing and Revive Eco and so on?
So we have a website which is revive-eco.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter and Instagram, it's revive_eco. So we're posting stuff sort of there as frequently as we can. We have a mailing list on our website as well. If you want to sign up, you'll get sort of as frequent newsletters as we can. At the moment, we're pretty sort of snowed under with work at the moment, but we're trying to keep people in the loop. And that's the kind of probably the best places to stay tuned to what we're up to.
Great. And is it possible to buy any products already with that have the Revive Eco products in them, or you're not quite there yet?
We're not quite there yet. We're working with a couple of different potential customers, and there's kind of lots in the pipeline, lots of kind of exciting potential collaborations there, but there's nothing actually available for sale quite yet.
Well, for anyone who signs up for your mailing list or follows you on social media, I'm sure you'll let us know as soon as it's available. Yeah, well, Fergus, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting to hear your thoughts and ideas, and really looking forward to trying some of the new the products that that you end up making with your oils, and maybe I'll fertilize my tomatoes with some coffee grounds.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually one of the products it's best for, tomatoes and roses. So
okay, because it's
they're kind of the key ones.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much, Fergus. Really appreciate your time.
No bother. Thanks.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Sustainability Matters Today. If you'd like to learn more about Fergus and Revive Eco, please visit their website at revive-eco.com or like their Facebook page at Revive Eco. You can also follow them on Twitter at Revive_Eco. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the podcast to be the first to know about new episodes. We're on Spotify, the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, and really anywhere else where you can listen to podcasts. And let us know you listened to this episode on Instagram. Tag us at Revive_Eco and at Sustainability Matters Today. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and talk to you soon.